So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first live of 2022. As you can see, I have a new name for the live, which is Conversation from the Trenches. And there's a reason we call it Conversations from the Trenches, because what we realized about the lives was that it focused on conversations about women, but the reason those conversations resonated was because it was authentic, it was vulnerable, it was about all kinds of challenges and topics and concerns that deeply affect women across the world today, but seen from the lens of women, explored from the footsteps of the women who are walking those paths, and through the sharing of their experiences, there was a collective sharing of the wisdom. Ergo, the name Wisdom from the Trenches. And in our first episode of Wisdom from the Trenches, I have with me the incredibly inspirational Blossom Fernandez, who's a competitive endurance athlete. Blossom, welcome.
Thanks, Rekha. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am so grateful that you have joined us today for this conversation because you're so incredibly inspirational, and I think a lot of people would have told you this having watched your social feeds over the past couple of years, past many years actually. And I thought, I was just very grateful that you agreed to have a conversation about your transformation journey and the journey of you as a woman being a competitive endurance athlete and how you have transitioned. So can I invite you to just give the viewers a little context of of your athletic career, just to set the context before we dive into exploring your personal journey with it.
Okay. So my athletic career or journey started in 2016 with a 5K run that I did with you.
I'm going to hide. I'm going to hide. I'm going to go hide under a rock.
Yeah, but so that's where it started. And I ran that in memory of my grandmother who suffered from breast cancer and other complications. And crossed the finish line, felt so good, wanted to know what's next, found out about a 10K race, did a couple of those 10K runs, then did a swimathon because, that's what kind of came up on my radar. Mm-hmm. And then I was running and I was swimming. And so a friend said, why don't you start cycling? And so I started cycling and I did a triathlon, which was an Olympic distance. And then the natural progression is a half Ironman. And a very ambitious goal was a full Ironman, which I did. Eventually, I did it in 2019. So from 2016 to 2019, I just kept growing in distances and dreams, or not dreams, but in ambitions or visions. And I finished the full Ironman. I qualified for something known as the Ultraman, which was is 2.5 times an Ironman. So if I thought it couldn't get any tougher, it definitely could. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I have not been able to do the Ultraman, and I eventually withdrew from the race. And this year, I've decided to focus on cycling because the pandemic turned me into a very strong cyclist. And my goal for this year is a very ambitious one. I'm going to keep it a little under wraps, but it's going to be only cycling focused. So yeah, from 5K to in 2016, we're now in 2021. 2022. Yeah. Sorry. And I've done pretty much all the distances in running, swimming, and cycling. Yeah.
Blossom, you make it sound so easy. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I did this, I did the 5K, and then I did a couple of 10Ks, and then I went, I just took up swimming, and then I went cycling. You make it sound so easy. But I do remember when I met you, you were not an athlete. You were with Jet Airways as a part of their cabin crew. You had a crazy schedule, a flying schedule that was crazy. You were a baker in your free time, and you made sinful stuff, very sinful stuff. And suddenly that changed. Suddenly the whole picture changed. So this is not just about your athletics. As someone who has sat on the sidelines and watched you, I could see a transition and a transformation unfolding under my eyes. So I'm very curious. Clearly, this is a journey that you followed a soul calling, I would call it, or a dream that came from the depths of your being. Tell us, what does it mean as a woman to listen to your inner calling and to choose, I mean, intentionally choose very challenging and unconventional goals that, that are very uncommon for women to pick up? Tell us what that's like.
So one of the things that my journey, or the way I end up picking up, setting myself goals or targets, is I never think that, oh, can I as a woman do that? I mean, that's never a question that ever crossed my mind.
Mhm,
I've never been brought up to, with discrimination, where girls can only do certain things and the guys can do everything else. That's not how I
mhm,
was brought up. But having said that, I have faced a lot of challenges along the
mhm,
way, and difficulties, and yeah, I've had those things as a woman. I've been facing those, but yeah, I just never think that I'm a woman. When it does come to the forefront that, oh, you're a woman and you're doing this because it's not safe for you to go out at a certain time because
yeah.
it's still dark and you don't know who's following you, and are you say how are you protecting yourself? So those things kind of um, are things that I think about when when I feel like, oh yeah, I'm a woman now, because a guy won't
Mhm,
have to think about, leaving the house at 5 o'clock in the morning for a run. But oh
yeah.
yeah, I'm a woman and I can't go out now. So,
Mm,
but also, because I don't limit myself by my
yeah.
gender, I
Yeah.
just, you know, I try to be out there with everybody, and I try to show other women that, listen, just do it. Don't think that you're a woman. So, honestly, I really never think that. But having said that, I do have friends who are from, who've been brought up, to believe
Yeah.
that the woman's place, not her place, but it's equally important for her to manage her family, and then her ambitions and her dreams come second. So for them, people like me serve as, I won't use the word inspiration, but I would say as examples of, you know, being gender neutral in what can and cannot be done.
All right. You
Yeah.
know, I would not hesitate to use the word inspirational. And the reason I would not hesitate to use the word inspirational is because while you are extremely fortunate to not have been raised with a gender distinction or a barrier in your mind, the truth of it is that's not the reality for so many
Yeah.
of us. And
Yeah.
it is extremely inspirational for us to look at somebody who is waking up at 4 in the morning and hitting the swimming pool at 5:30, or is looking for swimming pools in different towns across the country, because it shows us that you can rise above all these barriers that are planted in our minds. But before we go down to that, before we go down to the gender aspect, what I really would like to know is about the transformation of Blossom, the non-athlete, to Blossom, the woman who finished the half Ironman and the Ironman. How have you transformed as a person?
Okay, so I'll take you back much further than, I mean, I'll take you back to
Mhm,
somewhere around 2006. And there was a personal event in my life
mhm.
where I was dumped by the guy I was supposed to get married to.
Okay.
Just the month that I was supposed to get married. I mean, we literally had to
Oh,
just show up at, at
I
church
didn't
and
know
get
that.
married. Everything was done. So
Mhm,
that affected my confidence
mm,
uh, in a very, very big way,
mm.
and my yeah, confidence and
Your
my belief
self-esteem.
in myself, and
Mm,
I became that typical woman who would look to others for gratification, for praise, for you
for
know uh,
validation. So basically,
yeah,
validation.
validation. And then social media was something that was very new in India. So it was so
Mhm,
important to be seen on social media. And I lived in Mumbai. So I was out partying and drinking and,
mm,
dressing up. And I just wanted to, it was like I was rebelling, but
Mm,
I didn't know why.
mm,
I just felt like, oh my God, this happened to me, but I can't let it define me. So I'm going to show the world that, oh, I've
mm,
gotten over it and I'm now, enjoying my life.
mm.
So that's one. So, when I think about how I transformed, I go back to that blossom,
Yeah, yeah,
look for
yeah,
validation from other people. Now,
yeah.
when I moved to Bangalore,
Mm,
I didn't adjust very well to the city initially because I came from Mumbai to Bangalore and I didn't know anybody. This was the first time, I'd moved, not the first time, but I really didn't know anybody. And it wasn't a move that I was very happy about, but
mm,
for personal reasons, I moved.
mhm,
And so when I moved, because I hated the place and I didn't know anybody, I didn't like my job at that time because in
mm,
Mumbai I was an international flight attendant. In Bangalore for a couple of years I was a domestic flight attendant.
mhm,
So all the money, the travel, the lifestyle changed completely.
mhm.
And then I was miserable and I made everybody around me miserable because I
Yeah,
wasn't happy.
yeah.
And I kept saying, I wish I felt like I was also talentless because my
Mhm,
life was defined by my friends and my social circle in Bombay. And
mhm.
then I came to Bangalore and I had nobody and I just had work and home.
Yeah,
And so I kept saying to myself, I wish I had a talent that I could capitalize on. I really I wish I had a talent that I could spend my time doing.
mm,
I would say this and cry myself to sleep and fight with the with everybody.
yeah,
And one day, I realized that, hey, I'm baking and I'm making money. This is my talent.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was never a plan. So I was
Right.
baking and feeding colleagues and sharing cake with them. And then
Yeah,
somebody said, I want an order, and that's how it
yeah.
went. And then I said, oh,
Mm,
wait. So I said that in passing. I kept
mm.
saying that in passing that I want a talent. And then this is my talent. I can bake.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that's when I realized that, okay, situations teach you and mold you and change you.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, then I was like a full-fledged baker and I became famous in Bangalore, which was never the plan.
yeah,
I just grew very organically,
right.
and social media did play a little bit of a role in it. But because of the Friday convent and the circle that we
Yeah,
were in,
yeah,
I became famous. I was in the newspaper, and then I was like, "Oh wow, I'm getting the gratification in a different form."
yeah,
My talent and my ability. I mean, people are validating what I do not because of I'm a flashy person or I'm so outgoing, but they
yeah.
actually appreciate my work. You know,
Right, right.
so yeah, and then of course we did the 5K, and
Yeah,
then I realized that it was a 5K for us. I mean, even for me at that point of time, it was really hard because I had never done it before. And then
yes.
when I crossed that finish line, I said, "Oh wow!" So literally, if I put my mind to it, I can make
Mm-hmm.
it happen. And
Mm,
so that's how I transformed, just conquering one goal after the other.
mm-hmm.
So what I've realized I am the kind of person who will say, okay, I'm going to do an Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, not a rash decision. I will consider everything, but I'll say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to do an Ironman, and I'm not going to I don't let the goal scare me.
Yeah.
So I set the goal and
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I gave myself 6 months to do the Ironman, but I
Mm,
never. What I made sure I didn't do was I
mm-hmm.
didn't focus on the end result.
Yeah.
I made sure that I set myself up to win. I mean, for small wins along the
Mm-hmm.
way. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I transformed as a person. I became very confident in my
Yeah,
ability to deliver, you know,
absolutely.
deliver for others when I was baking and
Mm-hmm.
deliver for myself. So that's how I really, really transformed from the person who wanted to be
You
known
know,
as an outgoing
no,
person. Now I am exactly the opposite of who I was back then. I
yeah.
have a very small social circle. I
Yeah.
don't leave my house.
Yeah.
Training is my priority.
Yeah.
And I don't eat anything I used to bake because my life.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you really cannot be defined. You can't box yourself up and think that's who you are and that's how the next few years are going to be. So when
Right.
people ask me about what's your 5 year like stupid interview questions like where do you see yourself in 5 years? I say, no, I don't see myself in 5 years. I can tell you 6 months and I can tell you 1 year. But yeah, I don't. I mean, 5 years, so much has changed for me personally
Yeah.
that no way. And now because of the pandemic, I think if anybody's asking those questions, they need to be short.
Blossom, I will tell you one thing. What really stood out for me? We have Precious. Hello, Precious. Precious says, Blossom, you're amazing. I like setting goals for myself
Thanks,
too.
Precious.
Precious,
Such a lovely name.
yeah, Precious does some amazing work in the area of gender violence in Zimbabwe,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm just so glad you're here, Precious. So, one of the things that struck me when I was watching you transform was I felt your locus, your focus had shifted from the outside to you. And every time I would look at your social media, I found you celebrating yourself. Like I see you, I would see you dancing after doing some impossible goals. I remember the swimming pool dance.
Oh
I
my God,
remember
I remember.
I remember that. And you would talk, your relationship with food changed. That was something that stood out to me because you were talking about food that was good for the body. That was, how you were talking about training in the context of the body. You became somebody who had a lot of substance. And I think for me, that was the big transformation that I saw. That I said, wow, this woman who I thought was she was a jet setter, she was a baker, but now she's become this very powerful woman who's celebrating herself, regardless of whether there's good stuff happening or bad stuff happening, right? Good and bad being relative labels that we tend to put on stuff.
Yeah.
But I still come back to this point that I don't think it still could have been easy because you were flying against erratic schedules most of the time, and you still had a busy life. When you talk about a triathlon and particularly a half Ironman or an Ironman, you're talking about grueling training schedules, right? So give us an understanding of the kind of challenges you came up against, because I don't think it's as easy as, okay, I set a goal and I do it. Hey, Blossom, I can't get out of bed with that. Okay, let me be very honest. One cold morning and I'm back under my covers.
Yeah.
How did you set yourself up to win when you set these challenges, which are quite, even for an ordinary human being, it's these ambitious goals, right? So how did you set yourself up to win, and what are the kind of challenges that you intentionally worked to succeed against?
So, because of work that is flying, like you mentioned, the erratic schedule. So, the challenges I faced was of course working on, or rather, training with very minimal sleep,
Mm,
not having access to the kind of food that I need to eat because of training,
mm,
long hours on my feet, which meant that running and cycling,
yeah,
which is you're using your lower body the most,
yeah,
was working already in overdrive,
yeah,
and you know losing your not having a social life.
yeah.
So i read I read a lot of I don't read a lot of motivational books, but there are a lot of quotes that strike a chord
Mm-hmm,
within me. And
mm-hmm,
one of the quotes that I read was, you will never always be motivated, so you must always be disciplined. I mean,
mm,
you will never always be motivated, so that's why you must be disciplined, because
right,
motivation wanes, right? I mean, there are
right,
days when you're
yeah,
very high on motivation, and there are some days where you're like, forget it, like I don't care. Who am I
yeah,
answerable to? Just myself. So it's okay, I can let myself pass for one day. But what
right,
happens is, you let yourself go, you slack that one day, then that one day goes to two and the three, and then you think, oh, okay, it's only 3 days, I've been training so hard already, I won't lose
yeah,
anything. And
yeah,
that's when you're indisciplined.
yeah,
So what I did was, my fortunately, because Bangalore is a very small base of our international crew. So everybody knew the person I was, and it was
Mm,
very clear that Blossom's never going to come out with us anywhere.
mm.
Her priority is her training. So
Yeah,
it's first training and then everything else. So, and
right.
that's what I would do. So I would always get into, I used to fly predominantly Bangalore, Amsterdam route, where
Mm-hmm.
it would be a red eye flight. That's a night flight,
Yeah,
land in
yeah.
the morning. And it was a routine. So I formed a routine wherever I would go.
Mm,
So I needed sleep. So that was a priority. Forget everything else.
mm.
Sleep for 3 or 4 hours, wake up, train. So the idea was to get training out of the way so that I don't set myself up to make excuses for later on.
Prioritizing,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Knowing your priorities and
Yeah,
prioritizing them.
because
Right.
it's very easy to fall into
Yeah,
that pattern of making excuses. Now, there are a lot of people who say that wake up early in the morning and finish whatever you have to do so that you have the rest of the day free. I am that kind of a person, but there are
really?
also people who are not morning people who function
Yeah,
better later in the day. So whatever it is, figure out what works for you
yeah,
and make sure that you stick to it, because if I know that I'm a morning person, like after I wake up I need to train and get it out of the way. If I don't do that, I know by the evening my energy levels are low,
yeah.
I'm extremely low on motivation, and then I'm setting myself up for failure for that day.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Okay. I think that's very interesting that you talk about discipline, prioritizing, and
Mhm.
also knowing how your energy
Yeah.
flows
Yeah,
during the
you have to
day.
be very in tune with, not in tune with your body, but by now everybody knows how their body
Yeah,
functions and what kind of
yeah,
patterns they can develop.
yeah.
And also, you have to have this attitude that I don't care what people think about me.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
so I don't want to hang out with the crew and I don't want to go out, but I'm not stopping you guys from it. I'm not asking you guys to change your schedule around me.
Right.
Everybody has their own focus, and my focus is
Absolutely.
my training. And so I made sure that I never let where I travel to be a hindrance. So, like,
Mm,
you remember, right? Once when I traveled to Trivandrum, I asked you, hey, listen, I have a swim training in Trivandrum. Where can I swim? Or I have to run. And you told me where to go. So in
yeah,
today's day and age, there's literally very little stopping you from
yeah.
doing what you want to do and you can't use lack of information as a reason, you know.
Absolutely. No, I think you have to always be willing to step up and ask
Yeah.
for help because
Yeah.
information is available. People have, if it's not on the Internet of Things, people know where to point you. They
Yeah.
can point you in the right direction. So it is
Yeah.
definitely there. But now I
Oh,
have
sorry,
another.
one more thing I want to
Yeah,
say is with
sure.
regards to the good and the bad days, right? You said, and me being very active on social media and dancing. I look back at that and I'm like, oh my God, what the hell was I doing?
I loved it. For me, that was a highlight. Plus, let me tell you something. Watching you dance every time you did something, something seriously challenging, right? I could see you celebrate. And believe me, it's such a wonderful thing to see because I don't see many women open heartedly celebrate themselves. I
Yeah.
don't see many women open heartedly celebrate. Like, I struggle with it myself. For all my big talk right now, I struggle with it myself. And I know lots of women do. So I think that's a fantastic example you set out there. And I don't think you should say, what the hell were you doing with that?
I just did my bad dance moves and I'm like, oh my
No,
God.
no, you were very your dance moves were pretty cool. So don't worry.
Yeah.
But
So one of the things that I made sure that I did on social media was to share my bad days as well. So if you go through my feed,
yeah,
I have kind of withdrawn from social media a bit in the last year or so.
yeah,
I'm active, but not as much as I used to. But I made sure that I also shared my bad days because
hmm,
it's so unrealistic to have a news
yeah,
feed which is filled with wins and
yeah,
good times and good moments and celebrations. It's, as an athlete, you celebrate very little. You struggle a lot, and
yeah.
so it's important to show the struggles that you go through, the hard days, because
Right.
you not every day is a good day. Every training is so different that
Mm,
the outcome is also very different. So
yeah.
I felt that it was so important, and that resonated with a lot of people because they got back to me saying, "Oh, it's so nice to see you share the reality of training. It's not always, what they say, sweat is my sparkle and all of that. It is,
Yeah.
glowing and all of that. But there are days when you end up crying. There are days when you come back from a run and you just can't move, and everything hurts and you question your life choices. But so
It's
that's
a
something that is so important, to be realistic, and don't wear rose tinted glasses when you're viewing other people's
life.
journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings me to a very interesting question because you just mentioned about when things get there are days when you question your life choices. So what was the secret, or what is the secret of your resilience? What makes you hold on and keep going when things get excruciating and like when you're like wiping the bottom of the barrel? What makes you get back on track?
So again, a very something that I read somewhere was, when you think you're at your limit, that's when you need to push a little more.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's what I always try to do. You know,
How do you have some process to kind of help you push that bit?
so I always try to understand what are my abilities and what are my strengths when I reach that limit. So
Yeah.
like I lost my job
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
Jet shut, and I
Yeah.
was in the midst of training for an Ironman, and I had a choice whether to use up my savings were already depleting,
Right.
but do I give up my dream of becoming an Ironman,
Hmm.
or do I just say, okay, listen, I'm jobless and my priority is now, to find a job, and but my work never defined me, you know,
Hmm.
for the longest time. Yes, I was Blossom the flight attendant, but very few people know that. Few more
Yeah.
people know me more as Blossom the baker and Blossom the triathlete.
Right.
So I was like, which part of my life holds more importance, and
Yeah.
which part of my life shapes me as a person? And
Right.
so I reached the limit. My limit over there was no money.
Mm.
So the obvious thing would, I mean, nobody, very rarely do people actually go out and ask other people for money.
Yep.
It's a very shameful thing to say, not shame. I mean, if you know what I'm saying, like, you would really feel embarrassed to ask for money,
Yeah.
right? You question yourself as to why should anybody give you the money to achieve your dream? I mean,
Yeah.
what's in it for them,
Yeah.
right? Why, I mean, if you don't have the money to achieve your dream, then forget about your dream, right? Focus on making your own
Yeah.
money and getting there yourself. So that
Mhm.
was the limit that I reached. I actually reached rock bottom when I lost my job, and I spent many sleepless nights, yeah,
Mhm.
thinking whether asking setting up a crowdfund was the right thing to do or not. So I pushed myself a little out of my comfort zone, and I did that. So yeah.
Blossom, your story is amazing. Raksha Shastri has said it's inspiring. I completely agree with you, Raksha. Thank you for joining in. And everybody else, if you have questions, comments for Blossom, please put it in the chat box. I know Blossom's only going to be happy. She's sharing with so much honesty, so much vulnerability. And, this lady has a lot of wisdom to share with us, and all of us benefit from it. So if you have questions, please do put it in the chat box, and I promise you, even if we go a little bit over time, Blossom will take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
but but Blossom, I want to go back to this point that we were talking about at the beginning, which is about gender, right? We don't see, well, in India, we don't see many women. I mean, although the scenario is slowly changing now amongst the
Yeah.
younger kids, in the 30s and the 40s, we don't see many women in the area of sports or athletics. And definitely, I think it would be a gap in the endurance athletics, right? You've been in this space for a few years now. So, why do you think there is a gap? Is it harder for women in the area of sports or endurance athletics? What has your journey been like in this, with on account of your gender? Has it been harder for you because you're a woman? Not because of what you think, but
Yeah.
because of the environment.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, the sport is financially draining. So as
Mm,
a woman, you always want to have your own, your own little bit of money kept aside for,
yeah,
the what ifs. And so very often you would have to rely on a partner or family support to help you financially. And
right.
what I've seen out there is that for a woman to ask her partner or her father or family for money is very, very intimidating,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
It's if you can't afford it, don't do it. Stick to have dreams that you can afford or you can achieve, or why do you want to do it? What do you want to prove out there? Who do you want to show that you can do all these things?
yeah,
What's the big deal? You're 40, you're going to hit menopause soon. Are you sure you want to do that? Why are you
yeah,
running so much? It's bad
yeah,
for your knees.
yeah,
That. And as a woman, of course, safety, that's personal safety, and of course your family is also worried about you.
yeah,
um, so I just one thing that I did, I bought myself a taser. I said, to hell with it. Like, I'm scared. I am very scared. Even in the day when if I'm cycling out alone in certain areas, it's
hmm
scary. But
hmm
you
yeah.
have to empower yourself.
Yeah, Sindhu, thank you for that comment. Environment, Sania Mirza, an accomplished person, has decided to lay down a bad life is not easy
Yeah.
for a woman.
So again, yeah. So when you're in your 30s and 40s, you've already, for most women, they're already very well settled in their family life and their role as a wife and a mother. And sport takes away a lot of your time, takes away a lot of your energy, affects your mood. Because obviously you're tired and your family expects you to give them the same attention and your love and affection and everything that you would normally do if you weren't doing a sport. They don't expect you to change any of that.
I
So you
think,
you find a lot of women will take up running and triathlon for a couple of years and then say, okay, that's it. I did what I wanted to, and I'll
yeah,
probably stick to strength training where I just need to go to the gym twice or thrice a
right,
week, or
right.
do a couple of runs. But triathlon is a sport in India where you will find very, very few women um,
Mm,
taking it up in their mid 30s and 40s, and then
right.
we don't have any women in their 50s that I know of who are
Yeah.
active triathletes. They are fit
Mm,
people. They are involved in some sport, but at a very low level. But
mm-hmm.
nobody really takes it up as a competitive sport. Also,
Yeah.
because as women, I'll tell you. So the participation is low.
Mm,
Percentage is very low as compared to the men, and so even the organizers don't recognize us. So we have.
yeah.
I recently did a race where we were just in my category. We were, I think, five women,
Yeah.
and only the person who won the race got a medal
Mm,
because we were five women. So I mean, their logic was if there are more than 10 women, all three would get medals, whoever on three on the podium. So I said, how are you encouraging women in sport if this is what you're doing? I mean, you are getting less than 10 people and you're giving only the person who comes first. So
yeah.
tomorrow I'd be like, oh, if I'm racing against Blossom and I can't win against her and I'm
Mm.
getting nothing out of it, why would I do that race? I'll go and do it on my own time. Why would I spend money?
You
you
know
know
what
so
what you meant?
organizers need to change their way of thinking to encourage women
I
to
think I think
participate.
Blossom, what you say is a very popular problem with the system.
Yeah.
This is what happens in the system anywhere. Women have, whether it's in the when you climb up the corporate ladder
Yeah.
or in any area where once the mass of women start to go down and they become the lower numbers, suddenly you have to it's either first or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's never you're not given credits for being in that space. You're not given the support, and you raise a very critical
Yeah.
aspect here. But I have one question that's been on my mind. In all of this journey, did you come up against yourself? Like we've talked about the environment, but did you come up against your conditioning at any point? Uh, how did you handle that, if you ever have? I would love to know that.
Not conditioning, but the only thing I always worry about is finances. So I'm on my own, and
Yeah,
so when my sport is expensive, so
yeah,
I'm all constantly debating, with myself it's whether it's an investment that, I mean, I know it's a very good investment in myself, but what if I end up jobless again, and I'm back to
I
square one
understand.
with no money.
Yeah,
But then when I reach that, I always think about where I came from. And you have to have, that belief in yourself that you can and you will find a way out of it. I mean, yes, there are some very extreme situations where it's hopeless and really nothing makes sense, but think about all that you have been through. So that's what I do. I mean, I say, I lost my job, and I ask people, and my biggest donors were people who didn't know me.
yeah,
People who knew me and knew my story did not contribute to it, and for whatever reasons, and that's their thing. But I'm saying, you it's within you. You just have to be able, you need to know yourself really well and believe in yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to don't look for external gratification and motivation and belief. It's not going to come, or if it comes, it will be very short lived.
yeah. And I think also what you make is another very important point is, Blossom, you're very authentic. You're extremely authentic. And therefore, when you go out and crowdfund, or when you go out and say, I want something, people take it very seriously. The second thing about you is you also give back. Like, I also know about the fact that you run for charity. I do know that you're an ambassador for mental health. And, you give back in a lot of ways. And, that's the way of the universe. What you put out always comes back to you. And that's
Yeah.
the authenticity of who you are as a person. You maintain the integrity of yourself, which is very important. So, yeah, I mean, this is such a fabulous conversation, but we're almost at the end of it, and I want to wind up. You shared a lot, Blossom. I'm very grateful that you have. But to all the women who are listening, and there are quite a few of them who are listening avidly, what wisdom do you have from the trenches for the women who who want to follow, who feel a calling in their souls, who are feeling very called, and they know that calling is going to take them down very unconventional paths, even on challenging paths? What wisdom do you have? Do you have maybe a couple of words of wisdom that you can give them?
Yeah, so something I believe in very, very strongly, and something that I live with on an everyday basis is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is a very common, I mean, right now, it's a very common saying, and many people would have come across it, but to actually embrace it is much harder than you imagine.
Yeah,
And not only as an athlete, we have more uncomfortable days than days of comfort, but even in your personal life, in your professional life, there's always going to be uncomfortable days, but you
yeah,
have to embrace the discomfort to know what comfort feels like. To be able to, yeah, to be able to face the next uncomfortable challenge, only knowing that you will embrace it and get comfortable with it. So
yeah,
as you embrace one discomfort over the next, you are transforming as a person.
yeah,
Yeah, so I always believe that every day you're making micro decisions that are changing your life, right? What to
yeah,
eat, when to sleep,
yeah,
where to go, what to do. And so it's so important that when you're faced with discomfort, you accept it, process it, and
move forward.
deal with it. Yeah, move forward. Yeah. And also, so one thing, as an athlete, I am a competitive athlete. I love winning. But winning over others is not important to me.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if if everyone will understand what I'm saying. So
yeah,
I I never look at my competitors' numbers, what my competitors doing. I'm not stalking them on social media. I know who my competition is. It's very clear to me that okay, this person is my competition. But what good is me knowing my competition if I
Mhm.
don't know what I'm capable of? If
Yeah,
I don't set myself to become better and faster and stronger. So I focus on myself and I want to win with myself. Every race I do, I don't set a target that, oh, this girl cycles so fast, so I need to be faster than her.
yeah,
I
yeah.
set myself up saying the last race I did, I hit this speed. This race, I want this speed. So it it
It's about building yourself up
yeah.
incrementally by
Also
constantly
choosing the
improving.
mental battles.
Yep.
It would mentally take away all my time thinking about what my competitor is doing. Is she training now? Oh, I'm sleeping now. What's she eating? Is this helping her? I mean, it's not, not a mental battle I want to deal with. So I'd rather choose my mental battles wisely.
I think that's a very important point, Blossom, because not just from the athletic perspective, we live in a world, particularly over the past 2 years, we live in a world which is extremely social.
Yeah.
Everyone's on social media. And I think it also affects our
Yeah.
self esteem
Yeah.
terribly because,
Yes.
what we see on social media is not reality. There are very
Yeah.
few people who are brutally authentic out there. And to compare our real life with somebody's social life, whoever they
Yeah.
are, one
Yeah.
of the worst things you can do for your own emotional and mental health, right? So that's
Right.
a great point. And do you have any more, or you've given us some very tough ones? So do you like do you have like an easy one, like the icing on the cake that we can all start following from tomorrow?
uh, no, I think the get comfortable with being uncomfortable is one that everybody should try and embrace. I mean, think
Agree.
about something in your life that's making you feel uncomfortable today and
Yeah,
sit with it, think about it, process it, and then move forward.
yeah,
Figure out how you're going to deal with it and move forward. So I mean, professionally, personally, financial, I mean, in whatever aspect, right, there is something that's making us uncomfortable.
yeah,
I changed jobs I moved from the aviation industry to the real estate industry where I knew nothing, and when I say nothing, I mean nothing. It
yeah.
was extremely uncomfortable for me, and I mean, I just embraced it because I needed the job. I needed to be financially independent, and I embraced it. And today I can talk real estate lingo, and I can, it's been less than a year, but it's just you have to embrace the discomfort.
Well, a lot of lovely compliments coming your way
Oh,
from
thank you.
which has been flashing up on the screen. I want to thank
So I'm not
everybody.
wearing my glasses, so I can't read them. So I will read
Don't,
them.
don't, no, don't worry, don't worry. I will send you a copy of this recording. It will be up on YouTube for you. But this has been a fantastic conversation, Blossom. Like I said, I am so grateful that you agreed to have this conversation, to let it, because you practically let us into your life. You've shown us
Yeah.
glimpses of your personal life, your personal journey. Your sharing has been very honest and vulnerable. I'm just very grateful because this is exactly what a conversation from the trenches in my head. And I'm so grateful that you've kickstarted it. To everybody who has joined us today, thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us. We will be back next Friday with yet another conversation, and I hope all of you will join us again next week. Blossom, any last words before we sign off for the evening?
Yes, thank you everyone who joined in. And I'm so glad that you took the time out of your schedules to be here. And to you, Rekha, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I am extremely comfortable sharing my life and journey with you. You know that. And so
I,
thanks
I'm
everybody.